Hello. Thank you for sharing this time with me again. As you've heard me mention before, I use an audio daily devotion. To access it, I use an app, and the opening page always has the same printed words. Become aware of God's gaze of love upon you. Often, the day's devotion doesn't directly reference those words, but this past week I was particularly drawn to them when some of the devotions focused on the creation story. We're all familiar with the rhythm of this story in Genesis that almost has a refrain quality to it by the repetition of the words, God created, and then a few verses later, and saw that it was good. It is easy for me to fully believe and accept that God's creation of the natural world and of people in general is good. But to acknowledge that God looks on me with a gaze of love is harder for me. I see my faults, failings, shortcomings, and downright sins. And it's hard for my heart to accept that I too am a cherished part of creation. But I gained some new insights with this week's devotions. Pause for a moment and think about something you created. It can be almost anything. A special meal in which people delighted. A quilt that is a joy of color. A finely crafted wooden bowl. A poem. A musical solo. A warm knitted sweater. The list is endless. Now pause to think how you feel about your creation. Allow yourself to acknowledge feelings of satisfaction and meaning in what you created. Notice a sense of pride in a job well done and a sense of affection toward that which your hands and your abilities made a reality. Now consider your creation from a more critical point of view. What about that left sleeve on the sweater? Yes, actually, it is a little shorter than the right one. And what about the apple pie for that meal? You're right, the crust was overcooked. And that poem? No, it won't be published. But despite these critiques, the feelings of affection, pride, and satisfaction are still valid and true. Although we are clearly not God, I invite you to stretch your imagination even further to consider the feelings of a creator so masterful and holy that every mountain, ocean, bird, and person on earth have been created. And we don't have to imagine how God feels about this. The Bible tells us God saw all of it as good. If our simplistic human creations bring us meaning and affection, God's feelings must be thousands of times more, since God's creations are so much more than we could ever do. And if we can still feel the pie was tasty and enjoyed by others, despite the imperfect crust, or that sweater was a good one, despite the sleeve differences, then I suspect God feels similarly about us. Perhaps God even says tenderly, yes, I know. You have trouble with assertiveness or anger or all kinds of things. And yes, you have some bad habits, but that does not change my feelings of love and care for you. And certainly, God showed us that through Jesus' actions on earth. Jesus loved and accepted all people. He touched lepers, welcomed children, spoke to women, and accepted foreigners. And I suspect he looked with a gaze of love on each of these people. May we all know God indeed gazes on us in love.